podcast is brought to you by Reimagine Radio. Stay tuned to connect together for more content from the Disability Foundation. My name is Graeme Wyman, and I'm the program coordinator with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. Today I'm joined by the CEO of Roland Canada, Brian Dupas, and Dave Symington. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks, Graham.
Thank you for joining me today. So one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show, Brian, was after our first podcast with Dave and Sam. They both spoke very highly of Roland and how their instruments impacted their lives and the VAMS program when the society started. So Dave, I don't know if you want to just kind of give a little.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I don't remember exactly how that relationship started, but I think we probably reached out. Sam is, usually does, and trying to find resources, trying to find products, and it was all good timing because MIDI was really becoming well known, and I had been fumbling around trying to play acoustic instruments and like just have a snare and a tom-tom, one on each side, kind of. It was not very satisfying at all. And so I think the original product for me was the Pad 80, and it was just a huge breakthrough that even though, we had to program our own sounds, it didn't have an internal sound source, but we had a sound module, and we put together a few kits that I could choose from, and before I knew it, I was playing a simple beat and was kind of on my way. I mean, it was just really a major step in the process, because I think we could have been frustrated early on and just thought, you know what, this isn't going to work. But Roland was incredibly supportive of what we're doing and encouraging us and working with us on the equipment and setting things up. So, with keyboards and drums and MIDI modules and sequencers. We use sequencers for some things. I actually used the Pad 80s to play some melodic parts and some. And Sam used a combination of sequencing and keyboard programming, so he could just hit certain keys and turn certain keys off, because he was much better at hitting the black keys without, just using the side of his hand, because you tend to, if you try to hit the white keys, you're going to end up pushing two down. Or he'd turn the two white keys off on each side of the one key he wanted to hit. But there was all a programming issue and a big learning curve. And, our task was to learn how to play the instruments more efficiently, write songs, write lyrics, and do our part of it. But it was a very exciting time and a very supportive time, and quite a few people got involved, and now you're here.
Well, I think, again, this is going back a long way. I'm trying to peg the year, but I think we were in the mid-'80s probably.
86-ish, I think. I met Sam in 85, so it's probably mid to late 86 when we first met.
Yeah. So there you go. I'm pretty close. So in the mid-'80s, and at that time, Roland was a very new company in Canada. We were small, but we were growing really quickly, and we had some really keen and outside-the-box thinkers at our company. And I think a connection was made between Sam Sullivan and Barry Kramer of our company. And I think you're right. I think Sam reached out saying, "Here's what we're trying to do. Can Roland help us?" And Barry at that time was very open to, yeah, we have some technology. We haven't really tried to apply it that way, but let's see what we can do. And at that time, we had quite a few sequencing type sequencers, hardware sequencers that were available. So we made some of that product available because, you know, again, for somebody to sit down and use it as a composition tool, for a musician or a non-musician, you could sit down and actually compose, put music together with keyboards and synthesizers. And then, of course, that time MIDI was blowing wide open in terms of the musical instrument digital interface. So now there was all this connectivity between synthesizers and drum machines and other devices. So this was all exploding at the same time. And I remember some of the things that we were doing initially with VAMS and with SAM. And the word MacGyver keeps popping into my head because there was a lot of things that we were out there. There was no template for this. We were making things up as we went. So, you know, I remember we were designing stands that had all kinds of triggers on them. We had to find ways to get keyboards down to a certain length or to fit in certain dimensions and things like this, so it was accessible. And at that time, we used to carry a line of keyboard stands. It was called Ultimate Support, and this stuff we used to treat it like Lego. We used to cut it in pieces and do whatever we wanted to it. And I remember sometimes Barry would ask us to make these stands. He said, "Okay, I need a stand, but it needs to mount a 61-note keyboard, but it can only be 28 inches off the ground. But the sustain pedal needs to be in a certain area. And I need a couple of trigger pads over here, right above the keyboard. And we'd all be scratching our heads, but then we sit down and we build these things. They look like lunar landers, and then we get them over to Sam, and then he would do his work with it. So it was really kind of fun and exciting because there was no roadmap for this. We were all trying to, you know, we were just making it up as we went along and leveraging technology to make music.
That seems like
I was thinking about stands just before you said that, because I remembered there was these 6 or 8 way kind of adjustable stand heads that were very complicated, and to get my drums in the right position and the right angles. And I think at one point you guys built a frame, and I used that for a while. It was like a 3-sided frame that folded out, and I had, at one point I was using 3 pad 80s, one in the middle and one on each side. And the one in the middle I used to trigger sequences and special effects and that, because I didn't use it that often. It was hard for me to reach. But then I think we even added a couple of acoustic cymbals just for effect. So I had something to hide behind.
like any typical drummer, right? You need a big rig to hide behind.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It was a lot of trial and error, and fortunately, a lot of success.
Yeah. So I think that's how we got started, and again, it was an exciting time just from technology, because in our industry, prior to the 80s in the music industry, it had been pretty boring. You know, it'd been in the 60s and 70s, it was the age of the electronic organ, and that was starting to die out in the late 70s. But you know, the home organ was kind of was almost the appliance of the time. You know, everybody had to have a home organ, and that was where the music industry was focused around. And then, of course, acoustic piano and acoustic instruments, right, band and wind instruments, and those types of things. But the real technology started in the late 70s and 80s when we saw the breakout of synthesizers, and that kind of blew things wide open. And then with our company, fortunately, the Mr. Kagahashi, who was the founder of Roland, he was a visionary, and he wanted to take the company well beyond organ and organ accessories and those things. And even today, we've got we compete in about 22 different product categories, well outside the core instruments, which were digital piano, organ, synthesizer.
Well, I remember I moved back to Vancouver in '84, and a girlfriend of mine in Ottawa was a big fan of UZEP, and I loved them. I just, you know, I thought it was so cool. She was into this kind of fusion, jazz, rock, funky stuff, and I saw them live a couple of times. And And then I saw them out here a couple of times too. And then we did that, I think it was a trade show for Roland down at the Plaza of Nations. And we got to play with super percussion. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
The other group that came out of Pearson, and that's where there was a lot of different triggers, a lot of different sequencers and things that they were using. And then we got to jam with UZEB, but I was always impressed with how they utilized MIDI. I don't know if you remember that a lot of shows they would start off stage and they would use a remote system and play their instruments as they walked towards the stage. I still don't know how they did that, how it came across. So, the timing, there was no delays or anything. It was quite amazing. But I know you did a lot of work with UZEB as well.
Yeah, those guys were really on the fore, and great musicians coming from Quebec. And Quebec has always had a really good, strong music culture out there. And even today, when you travel across Canada, you still find the best developed industries for musicians still to play, record, perform, make a living is still in Quebec compared to other parts of Canada. Yeah. But those guys, Paul Brochu, Alain Caron,
Michael,
Michel Cousson, yeah, and we used to work with a retailer in Quebec City called Music Richard Gendreau, which was a big Roland dealer, and that's how we had the connection there. So we ended up working with those guys early in their career because they really wanted to leverage technology, and they wanted to, for a 3-piece band, they wanted to sound like an 8-piece band. And so a lot of our product guys were working early with them, and we were learning as well too, because again, they wanted to push the product beyond its limits, and nobody knew what the limits really were. So, you had the guitarist that was constantly, he always had something going on, some layering with keyboard or a string pad or something in the background with his playing. The drums, same thing. There was so much triggering going on of sequences and phrases behind the scenes. They really pushed it to the max at that time. I think they were probably the world leaders in pushing technology with MIDI at that time.
They must have been. I bumped into Alain. He was playing at Performance Works on Granville Island during one of the jazz festivals, probably 15 or 20 years ago. And we had a brief chat about it. He really remembered that. He thought it was a very exciting time, and he told me it was self-taught. I thought that was pretty interesting. He played that fretless bass like he was born with it, in his hands. But yeah, it was a great time. I think it was kind of good for me to have seen that before VAMS even happened, and kind of be aware of this technology, and kind of, because I think I was kind of locked into the notion that acoustic or nothing. There was something I had to get over, sitting behind an acoustic kit, because I still kind of drool at the thought of it, but no, that actually playing in a different format like that, using MIDI, using pads, using different, it's a very different feel to play electric instruments, and very satisfying, once we got over that hurdle of, this is real, we're actually playing, we're not, we weren't triggering sequences, we were just playing what we were playing. So that was, that was a very exciting breakthrough.
Yeah, where the technology's gone now with electronic drums, specifically V drums, which is our brand, is they've taken it a long way. The very first Roland electronic drum kits that you would have seen back in the 80s, they would have been, triangular shaped pads. And even at that time, the surface was quite hard. On the surface, they were using it was a 1/4-inch thick Kevlar. So it was actually the same stuff they used to put in bulletproof jackets for police officers going way back. This is how hard the surface was, right? So you would play that, they looked great, and they were quite resilient. but they were fatiguing for a drummer. You'd play these things for an hour and you would feel it. It would be fatiguing. So going from that, zoom forward to where we are today now with technology, now our V drums are using a multi-ply mesh head technology. So when you play a drum, we have some of our drum kits. There's a TD50 drum kit, which would be the top of the line. The shells are actual shells, like a maple type shell that you can see. Narrow, not quite as deep, but just like what you'd see on an acoustic kit. Hardware around it is the same. The mesh head feels like a traditional head that you would play on a drum head, and you can adjust the tension on it. But it's mesh, so it's quite resilient. You can play brushes on it. It's responsive to brushes. There's multiple sensors in there. The cymbals you can hit and choke. But we really focused on the feel to try and have a natural feel for the drummer.
Yeah.
So where we started way back then to where we are now, it's just been quantum leaps.
Yeah, I played those mesh heads. I remember I was at I think it was along in McQuaid in Victoria, and they set up a couple of snares with the mesh heads on either side of me, and I couldn't believe how much more. I mean, you could just drop your stick on it, and it would bounce like a real snare. Okay, so now I have to ask a question about what is the barrier, I guess, to doing that with the SPD 30s? Why can't you put mesh heads on those?
That's a great question. And there's been, from the original Octopad to where we are now, there's been probably 6-7 generations or iterations of the, we call it the Spud series, the SPD series.
Yeah.
Where you can have, we have an SPD SX, which is a sample pad, loading your samples or whatever you want. Use out multiple triggers.
Yeah.
So far, up till now, the limitation has been to have an all-in-one product that has sounds, the ability to sample that kind of thing, and have a mesh head technology has been very difficult because the mesh head there's a certain amount of space that's required. There's a point where it will wear out, just like where a rubber pad, if it's made of the right material, it will last 10, 15, 20 years if you look after it. The mesh heads, they're actually intended to wear out as well too, just like a drum head will wear out. Gotcha. They last longer. Typically, if someone's playing an acoustic drum head, they're playing a lot, they might get 3-4 months, maybe 6 months out of it. If you're a heavy player, you might get only a couple months. Mesh heads typically are 1 to 2 years, but they will wear out. So there's been that's probably been one of the biggest issues is if you put a mesh head in something like that, it's going to wear out. How do you do it when you replace it? But that said, it does, that's the direction that we see things going, because ultimately it's all about touch and feel. And Roland's mandate has never been to replace instruments, the acoustic instruments. We know we build a digital piano, but it's never been designed to replace the acoustic piano. And same with percussion, the other products. But it's been more to enhance the opportunity for the musician and create opportunity for creativity. So without tipping my hand too far, what's coming down in the future, your question's a really good one. Does it make sense to have something that has more of a feel or mesh head feel in a Spud? Absolutely. What we are seeing now is we have many different trigger interfaces you can buy. Some are just 2-trigger, 4-trigger, 6-trigger interfaces. And we're seeing a lot of musicians are going to what's called hybrid drumming. So they're going to have their acoustic kit, but they're going to have 2 or 3 or 5 different types of triggers or drum pads built into their kit. And they're using a trigger interface for that. So, or an SPD type product. You might have an SPD 30 as the brain, but it's got enough inputs that you could include an additional pad, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-inch pad, or some bar triggers that we put in there, which are small, compact, and fit in compact. And there's additional trigger devices. So that's been the evolution the last 3-4 years that we've seen. Is the hybrid drumming revolution. You've got guys that are buying acoustic. You guys have guys that are buying electronic. A lot of people have both. you know, because you want to play live with your acoustic kit, and you want to have that big feel and push the air. But at home, you can't necessarily play an acoustic kit, or sometimes in the studio, it's easier with electronic. But a lot of people have been going hybrid because it's compact and it's versatile for today's music.
It's funny you mentioned that.
I don't know if is Bill Bruford a Roland user? I know that he integrated electronics with his acoustic. Sometimes he was full electronic, sometimes he was full. But when I saw him with Earthworks, he had an integrated kit like that, and that was probably 25, 30 years ago. I don't know if you remember Earthworks, the Bill Bruford band.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not an official Roland endorser, but I can say that we work with everybody because a lot of the big name percussion artists have come to Roland at one time or another and saying, look, I'm really interested in your technology, or I'm trying to do this. Can you guys help me? So we've got a pretty big roster of people that we work with in terms of helping them.
Well, I have noted what you said about not to let anything out of the bag, but because I've been talking about, and I've asked many times about mesh heads for, I mean, if I feel any limitation, because really the Spud series is the best thing for me to use. It just makes the most sense because in terms of access, I can reach 16 different triggers easily without having to move around or reach, or it's just, you know, it just works. So when I played that mesh head, that was probably maybe something I shouldn't have done, because that's the only time I thought, wow, that would at least really help me on the snare level, because, you know, you can get those ghost notes and you can do a lot more subtly with, you know, with that kind of head, that's for sure. So I'm open to be the guinea pig.
All right, note that. Graeme, please note that somewhere.
I will. I'll put it, we'll have to get you guys together. So, Brian, you've been with the organization for over 30 years, 1983, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, what they call overnight success. You know, I'm in my 36th or 37th year at the company. Yeah, and I started. I know one of the questions you had is you know, why did you start, or what brought you to Roland? And I think it's almost the same answer for anybody you talk to in when you're talking about music industry, whether it's wholesale or manufacturing, is what brings us to getting into those positions or working with those companies is a lot of us were gear junkies and we just wanted access to gear, or, you know, in my case, it was like, hey, what a great job. I can get gear at cost, right? And so that's kind of, you know, I started right at the bottom. I started right in the warehouse in Roland and worked my way up. There's probably only one or two positions I haven't worked in our company in Roland. And but it's given me a really good understanding how the company works and how the business works and everything like that. But yeah, that was the, you know, when I got out of school, I went to Alberta for a few years and worked. And because at the time, the economy back in the early 80s in BC wasn't very good, but in Alberta, it was still, you know, there was a boom going on. So I went out there and I worked on a survey crew, and I worked for a company that set up office furniture, and I was a cabinet maker by trade. So I had 2 or 3 jobs and I was working lots, but it wasn't very inspiring. And I was away from all my friends, and I'd always been involved in music growing up, going through high school, and in bands and things. So I ended up coming back, and an opportunity opened up, and I got into Roland. And it was a great time for the company because Roland started in 1972, the company, the brand. But Roland Canada was one of the Australia was the first, what they called at that time a JV, joint venture. So Mr. Kakahashi opened up a joint venture company in Australia, and then the second one was in Canada in about 1981. Okay. And when I was with the company in '83, it was small. It was maybe 20 people, but within a few years, it grew to 60, 70 people. Then we had offices and warehouses in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, and salespeople right across the country. So it really grew quickly. And at that time, the music industry was, you know, there was in the 80s, you know, if people reflect on the 80s now and all the 80s music and all the great bands from the 80s. And there was lots of music being played. And in Vancouver at that time, there was lots of live music venues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we used to go on a Friday night and you'd go to 5 or 6 different rock clubs and they were packed.
Wow.
And I knew guys that were in bands at that time. And, you know, back then a band was making $5,000 and $6,000 a week playing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night in a rock club in the 80s in Vancouver. It was thriving. So in the music industry was a good place to be because sales were good and the companies were growing and people were making money and, you know, people were buying synthesizers at that time. You know, for us, for Roland, it was, you know, Juno synthesizers and Yamaha had the DX7 and so everybody had these popular synthesizers that stores would sell 10 or 20 in a weekend kind of thing. And it was just exploding. So I got in at the right time. And of course, we've seen, like every industry, we've seen ups and downs, you know, with the economies and when recessions and things came in. But music has been a pretty good place to be because a lot of, you know, times are tough. People, you know, times are good. People enjoy music. Times are tough. They fall back on music. Maybe they're not buying as much gear. But even through this recent COVID crisis, we've seen actually our music industry sales have been quite good because people have been stuck at home. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of people are playing music or they're going back to music or they're going, you know what, I always wanted to learn to play the piano. I'm stuck at home now. I'm going to take up the piano. So that's what we've been seeing the last few months.
Yeah, I know a couple of my friends who work at Lon McQuaid, you're exactly right in the sense of how everyone's just setting up their own recording studios now, for instance, or their little project studios, things like that. So, I mean, there's nothing better when you have time on your hands than music, right?
Yeah, I think, and we've seen, you know, piano has been huge, entry level. Electronic percussion has been great as well too, because again, if you're downtown in a 700 square foot apartment, you're not going to set up that $12,000 DW kit and start doing your drums, your Neil Peart drum solo. Yeah. Your electronic drum kit is going to work much easier. But yeah, a lot of people doing recording now. Any companies that are making podcasting equipment are just sold out months and months in advance on these types of things. So
no, I know we pivoted with that, you know, for our program. You know, this is the third one that we've done, but you know, 3 months ago I would have never thought I'd be recording this way with, you know, anyone.
And you know, a lot of our marketing in the last few months has been we have a campaign, marketing campaign called Roland at Home. So, you know, you're at home. What are the things that we make that can help you enhance your at-home experience? So we focused on that. But now that the restrictions have started being lifted around Canada, more so out west than the east, it's still pretty tough in the east. But our focus is shifting to, okay, mobile musician, you know, so we make a lot of battery powered products. Okay. So just like you were talking about earlier about doing a concert in the park or whatever, we have little battery powered amplifiers that we'll probably be doing a lot of marketing on, and some other battery powered product for those people that, okay, now you can finally get outside. Well, take your music outside with you, you know? So that's hopefully what we see the next trend here in the next while, and as people are able to get back outdoors and play music, and no one knows for sure when you'll be able to go and see a live concert again.
Yeah, that's
I hope it's soon. I hope it's soon.
You know, fingers crossed on that for sure.
We've been talking about playing some of these outdoor shows using, you know, I think our friend Danny has a Roland battery powered monitor that he uses when he busks. And this Chapman Stick friend of mine, Jim, that I play with, he does the same. So yeah, we were thinking of doing sort of a flash, set up my drums, set up on the seawall somewhere and play for 45 minutes and disappear, you know?
Yeah, you could call it a pop-up band, right? Just like they have these pop-up stores.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Brian, you and Roland have a loan-out program that has helped Children's Hospital, I believe Ronald McDonald House, and now VAMS. Can you tell a little bit about that program and how that came about?
Well, what we wanted to do, we were talking earlier about some of the things that we pioneered with VAMS going way back in the 80s, but we've always had our hand in doing some work, philanthropic type work that we could do with organizations around the country. Mm-hmm. We're not a big wealthy corporation like the banks and all these other people that can write the big checks and make the donations. Mm-hmm. But the one thing we do have is music gear, and for years, ourselves included, we've seen companies make donations of products, to whether it be a hospital or an institution or an organization. But the problem was when you don't eat that piece of gear, particularly if it's electronic, 2 or 3, 5 years later, it becomes, it's not current technology. Mm-hmm. And the life cycle in a lot of products now, electronic products, is musical instruments is maybe 2 years. So if we design a new synthesizer right now, we release it in 2020, chances are 2022, there'll be the new one will come out. So we recognized this about 7 or 8 years ago that, some of the organizations that we help, technology they have is old. Or we would go into to meet with somebody, have a discovery meeting, and realize that, they're trying to teach kids some 20-year-old products, right? And there's no real excitement about that. And kids, they want the newest, latest, greatest stuff. Anybody who is a parent that has children, that okay, Dad, this just came out this morning. Can I get one? But so we recognized that there was an issue. So we started a loaner program. And so what that does, that allows, like we started with you, Graeme, it allows us to loan you some of the newest technology. But when the newer stuff comes out, we can exchange it for the newer product, right? And turn it over, rather than you have something you're working with is great, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, maybe it's obsolete, or it's not quite as good, or it's not up to, technology. And there's a lot of standards that keep changing with technology. Mm-hmm. Particularly a lot of our products, Roland designs our own processors. Okay. We don't buy them from anybody else. So that allows us to do, with our own processors, we can create our own technology that's not duplicated. But these processors are very powerful now. Like, the processing power that goes into an electronic drum kit or a digital piano sometimes can be the equivalent of, several MacBook Pros on one chip going into there, just to be able to handle all the technology and everything we're asking that instrument to do. So, and technology is changing. It's a very steep curve right now. So that's why we feel it's better to have a loan-up program. We can upgrade the technology, get rid of the old stuff, and keep things fresh and current. So we've done some stuff, as you mentioned, with Children's Hospital. They've got some great music over there. Mm-hmm. And again, this is mostly percussion-oriented instruments there. A little bit of piano, percussion, and same thing over at Ronald McDonald House there. There's obviously young children going through there, and children are attracted to drums. There's just something about it. You could set up 5 or 6 instruments in a room, and you bring in a 5-year-old kid, they're going to go to the drum kit. So it's just the way it is. So we're having some success over there as well too.
Oh, no, it's a great program. And again, thank you for letting us benefit from it. And so this was a question that Dave had. So with the instruments that Roland makes, do you feel that there's certain ones that would be more accessible to our clients compared to any of the products that you provide? And I know Dave and Sam have talked about the piano and the drums specifically.
Yeah, I think, there's no one answer to that, but I could probably speak to it categorically, because that's how we at Roland approach everything. We look at our different categories of products. And certainly we're seeing an explosion in entry-level piano sales. Right now we're making the smallest, most portable 88-note digital pianos that we've ever been making. With the zoom back 10 years ago, we had them, but they were bulkier, they were heavier, The piano action wasn't quite as good, where now it's very realistic. It even has, our piano action has like an ivory, we call it an ivory feel to it. So when you touch an ivory key, there's a little bit of it's not just all smooth, there's a bit of a grain to it. And so the quality, the touch and feel of these pianos is better than it's ever been. And they're small and compact. So from a piano standpoint, there's really a lot of opportunity there. Of course, percussion. We talked about electronic drum kits and hybrid kits and trigger systems, but there's probably percussion-related products that we have now. I'm going to guess we have in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 different products, if you include every pad, cymbal, and everything. So in terms of being able to put together something custom, we call it, say if it's a custom configuration, there's more opportunities than there ever has been. And there is, we've worked with some people around Canada, Disabilities directly, where we've had a reach out from somebody saying, look, I bought this TD50 drum kit, but I'm really trying to do this and this and this. And we put a product specialist in touch with them. And then we end up, working with a person and coming up with kind of a custom solution. But sometimes that involves a custom stand or hardware or a mount or something to get the angle correct. But we always are able to seem to find the answer because there's enough tools available now. But percussion that's probably, I would say, the biggest area. Recording products, of course, we talk people being at home now. There's probably a lot more recording going on than there ever has been, or at least in most recent times. And I think that's going to stick. I don't think that we're going to see the COVID situation, us being through this and whatever the new norm, we don't know what that will be. But I think people that have jumped into recording now, I don't think they're going to walk away from it. And, we're selling a lot of audio interfaces and MIDI interfaces and things like that. And that's an opportunistic area because, again, if you zoom back 20 years ago, if you wanted to record an album, you'd have to spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Now with a decent computer, a good audio interface, and a good microphone, you're well on your way. Now it's just the talent and the instruments at that point. So it's never been a great time to be a musician in terms of recording. One other area that we're kind of expanding into is new instruments. And again, Roland has never been the company. We've never been trying to compete with or put out of business the acoustic instruments. But, we have a new line of instruments. They're called the Aerophone. And these were released about 2.5 years ago. So cosmetically, they look kind of like a virtual saxophone. Not the same exact shape, but kind of the look of a modern looking saxophone. And there's a smaller one, an AEO one that looks more like a clarinet. But the fingering is set up to a saxophone or a clarinet. But of course, you have those instrument sounds, but you have all other types of instrument sounds as well too available to you. So for somebody who maybe had been or had worked with a wind instrument, that kind of thing, and somehow got away with it or became disabled, that kind of thing. Now there's an avenue that, okay, you know what? This is available. It has the same fingering you're used to. It has a mouthpiece that's familiar to it. And it's very light and it doesn't require the maintenance that you might have had to go through. So we're kind of breaking through into these new areas. And every time we look at this, we go, who is the customer for that? And it's not always the traditional customer. It's we normally sometimes build a product and then we see who the customer is. And we're quite surprised.
Yeah, I had actually a quadriplegic friend of mine. We went over to Long and McQuaid because he was interested in that particular product. And of course, part of the problem for him was, like me, doesn't have, good dexterity in his hands. But the idea, and he had to figure out some way to hang it more or less so it was at the right height because he couldn't really hold it while he played. So he needed, but these are the kind of further adaptations that the individual user needs to figure out. So it was stable, and then he could kind of use the side of his hands. So he couldn't do really complicated, fast movements, but it was satisfying, that he could play melodies and use different instruments, like you said. I mean, it was, I had never actually seen it before. It was very cool.
I wondered, brand new technology, and again, it was a long-winded answer for Graeme, but yeah, there's many different areas. I think that people with disabilities, that we have products. I think we have something for everyone, or at least for someone to take a look at and go, yeah, that might work for me.
I was kind of wondering when you talked earlier about additional triggers. Well, you were talking about drummers at the time, but I could see that they have use for a wide variety of things. But you mentioned, I think you called them bar triggers or spikes. What are they like functionally capable of doing, and how sensitive are they?
The product, the Roland product, is called a BT1, and it in itself is not a high-tech product. It's exactly what it kind of sounds like. It would be, say half the size of a hot dog, if you were to describe the size of it, and it's just got a rubber bar on it that might be 4 or 5 inches wide, and it's fairly firm when you hit it, but it's sensitive. But a lot of percussionists will buy that and work it into their acoustic kit, and they will use it to trigger a sequencer or a sequence or phrase from a sequencer or a synthesizer. Sometimes it's just an additional drum sound that they want, or they want to have a cowbell in their kit or something else. But it's quite versatile, and but we've seen all types of different applications for that. We had a guy that mounted an electronic drum kit onto a Harley Davidson, and he needed some additional. He couldn't fit all the pads onto that, but this is something that was, not everybody's doing that, but it was a good application for him. We've had other people that have bought these drum triggers and used them at Science World, places like that, just to trigger videos and things like that. These things are being used for many different non-musical applications.
Right.
They're robust, but they're sensitive. So, but from a musical standpoint, yeah, certainly you could use it if you just wanted to play a sound or to trigger something as well too.
And do you see any changes coming, new trigger type products coming down?
Always.
Yeah.
Always, right now, and again, hopefully we're not talking too much about drums and drummers, but the big release every year, there's a big industry trade show called the NAMM show. That's normally in January, middle of January in Anaheim. And that's where a lot of the companies like ourselves will gear up and display and show new products. And this past January at NAMM, we launched a new, we call it a VAD, Virtual Acoustic Design Drum Kit. So when you look at these drum kits, you can't tell they're electronic drum kits. It looks like a regular acoustic drum kit, except it says Roland on it. It doesn't say one of the other familiar acoustic brands. But they are all configured with triggers, and we have a drum brain and everything to work with these kits. So it's a full-on electronic drum kit hiding under an acoustic, visual. And this has been kind of a breakthrough area for us, because there's a lot of faithful Roland customers that own our drum kits, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of them. But they don't want to play it on stage because of the appearance. They want the appearance of playing that acoustic kit. So this is an area we've gone to cater to those customers, saying, yeah, you want the look of that acoustic kit, but you want all the functionality of the electronic kit? Here it is. But that has been the two directions for our company right now, is to get, make a familiar looking product for the drummer, but also focus on hybrid drumming at the same time. So I think you're going to see us keep developing hybrid drumming, and to try and bridge the acoustic and electronic world. You're going to see more products in there. There could be more triggers. The design of the cymbals has changed drastically. Where going back 20 years ago, it was just like a rubber garbage can lid. It went whoop, whoop, whoop. And now it became smaller, lighter in design. Now that we have the lightest, most realistic electronic cymbal ever. It moves like a real cymbal should. It's very light. You can choke it in different areas and get different response and things like this. And again, the the drummer shouldn't have to compromise his playing ability.
Yeah.
You should be able to play with the same technique. So that's what we're going for. But to answer your question, yeah, it's drums is it's our second biggest category of everything we make. Our electronic digital piano is our largest category. Electronic percussion is our second biggest category.
Well, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Always exciting.
And does this tie into how MIDI has evolved since? And I think MIDI, correct me if I'm wrong, actually was started at NAMM, or is it just actually using the function of MIDI just for different applications?
Well, you know what? MIDI has become, well, when we started with MIDI, and the way MIDI was founded back in the 80s, a lot of the synthesizer companies, so you had Roland, you had Sequential Circuits, you had Yamaha and other companies, they were trying to find a common platform that all of the instruments could connect and work together. But it was also a competitive time. You know, you didn't want to help the other company too much because you were in competition. So at that time, Roland had designed a standard. You know, there'd been a few things put forward, but nobody had really, the group didn't accept it. So Roland had designed a platform at that time. It was called DCB, Digital Communication Bus. And they kind of put it forward to everybody saying, you know what, we're willing to offer this up as the solution. We're not going to take credit for it, but let's start using it. And that quickly was changed over to a 5-pin DIN system and renamed MIDI. So that's kind of how MIDI started. And at that time, Roland was well positioned. So we started putting MIDI interfaces in everything, you know, synthesizers, pianos, electronic drums, guitar, synthesizer type products. And then, you know, as a customer, you were starting to see MIDI jacks on everything. Zoom forward to today, you still see MIDI connectivity, but a lot of the connections now are through USB MIDI connections. Right. And it's much cleaner, you know, because Dave, you would remember this, and Graeme, you know, going back years ago, if you wanted to connect things together, it wasn't always easy. You had to do some configuration, or you might need to go through a MIDI through or MIDI out or MIDI in and connect things. Sometimes they didn't always talk together, and it took a bit of working, you know, to make it all work. Where now it's much smoother and it's much more of a clean connection. And most customers don't have to go with what we used to have to go through. You know, you can plug your synthesizer or your audio interface directly into your MacBook Pro or your notebook computer, and they all automatically see each other, and most of the time they start working immediately right away. So you don't have to go through the headaches that we used to have to go through. Right. Kind of like recording. You know, before I started with Roland, I took a recording engineering course down at Water Street Sound. Okay. And I remember splicing tape and learning editing and things like that now. Yeah. And now if you're working within Pro Tools or you know, anything else, you want to do an edit, it takes you 2 seconds, right? Yeah. So it's that much easier now. You don't have to go through the pain of the old way. And MIDI is much that way now, where it's just really, it's plug and play. It's very, very little that you have configuration issues. You know, we used to get tech support calls all the time. How do I connect this to this? It's just not working. It's not talking to each other. It rarely happens now.
Gotcha. No, I mean, well, it is funny. I remember back in college, I did take a tape class, and you know, you make the smallest error in cutting the tape, you got to redo it, tape it back, like actually put the tape back in, and then try it again. So no, that's fascinating. Yeah,
I tried to explain it to, you know, people in their early 20s what we had to do, and they look at me like I'm on drugs. Really?
What's tape? I've never heard of tape before. 8 tracks.
So Roland just moved there to a new office or facility out in Surrey, and this is accompanied by the Roland Inspiration Center. What were some of the considerations you and the company made when building the center? And I know that the Inspiration Center also hosts events. What events before all this COVID-19 stuff happened, what would you be hosting?
Well, what we did, zoom back about 5 years ago, our company, we had the traditional business model where we had an office and a warehouse, normally industrial area, and we had a service center, but we didn't really get that many customers coming to visit us. It was more of an office with administration and then a warehouse for shipping and that. But we wanted to be close to customers and do things. We'd have to be partnered with a retailer. So we'd do a clinic at a store or a seminar, that kind of thing. And the directive from our mothership company in Japan was to, it's always been, but the last decade has been, get much closer to the customer. You know, it's one thing to understand our dealers that are selling the product, but we want to understand the customers. We want to hear from them. And a lot of times ideas for products come from customers and they make it to the factory and someday become a product. We moved in Toronto. We had an office and a warehouse, and same thing in Vancouver. And about 5 years ago, the management team, we decided that we weren't very good at warehousing and those types of things. We weren't experts in that. We were experts in marketing our products and selling our products. So we went to a third-party logistics company. So basically, we hired experts to do all of our shipping and things like that. Many companies, you know, if you order something from Samsung or you order something from Dyson, it's all being handled now through 3PLs. That's the way the world has gone because they're experts in shipping logistics. So we got rid of our warehouses and we moved. We wanted to be more urban. So in Toronto, we opened up an office in east of downtown in an area called Liberty Village, which is kind of a music hub. Like Sony Records is there, and SoCan and other people are in that area. And we have a kind of a funky office in a 140-year-old building. It's an office with a demo room, and we do events there. And then in Vancouver, we really wanted to be downtown, but of course, Vancouver's expensive. It's really expensive for commercial real estate. So we felt we can't be downtown. Let's at least be on the SkyTrain line. So we're on the Surrey, the King George SkyTrain line, and it's actually central to many of us that go to our office. And we have an office and a showroom there as well. And in that showroom, the last few years in Vancouver, we've been started out doing dealer training there. You know, when we sell our products, we normally train dealers and we do sales meetings and seminars in there. But we outfitted this space with for live streaming, you know, so there's cameras and things there. It's big enough to do events for 40 to 50 people. So in the last few years, we wanted to started getting public in. And we've done everything from, I'm going to say last year as an example. We had an event we started, it was going on bi-monthly. It was a singer-songwriter circle. Okay. So we were just hosting it, and we would bring in an artist to host the event, and people would bring in their own guitars, their keyboards, instruments, or whatever, and it was a seminar, and then everyone got a chance to play. So that was really cool. We had a lot of people coming to that, a lot of regulars, because it was a good forum for them to bounce their songs off people, and if they wanted to play an instrument while they were there, well, hey, there's a Roland instrument powered up right there. Help yourself. And then we've done some technology type workshops. You know, like one of the most recent ones we did would have been late in the fall last year was a guitar workshop focused on the guitarist using effects. Okay. And it was kind of a level 101, 201 on signal path. You know, big trend right now for guitar players is pedals and boutique pedals and all kinds of pedals. And of course, Boss Pedals is our brand. But there's a lot of misinformation out there in terms of how do you use these things, when to use them, how do you connect them up, where do you put them, in front of the amplifier or the effects change. So we just did some very basic training and seminars on here's the best way to use these things. And we got a really good reception on that. And then we've done some work with some music teachers. We're partnered with a couple of music organizations around the country, and we've done some recitals and things like that in space. So it's been quite a wide range of things. Yeah. In Toronto, we've been doing the same thing, but we've even opened up. We had a regular event every month called the Drone Club. And basically that is a bunch of synthesizer guys that bring in their synthesizers and everybody drones on one note. Okay. And they just riff on that for 3 hours from 8 p.m. till midnight. and with smoke machines and things like that. And that's been a regular event in Toronto for a year and a half, almost 2 years. So we got a lot of good things going on there. Unfortunately, with COVID hitting right now, we've had to, postpone many of these events right now, and we really hope we can get back to doing some of these things in the fall. Nobody really knows when, we can get do those things. Of course, public safety, our staff safety is paramount. So these are things we have to look at. But one thing that we will be doing in that right now, we are doing is more Facebook live streams. So we have these facilities that are perfect for that. They're all outfitted for live streaming, and we're doing more and more Facebook live with dealers and directly from Roland on products and technology.
I know, from what I've seen in the photos, looks like a great space.
Well, hopefully you didn't get a chance to get out there before everything hit in the news, but hopefully soon we get you back out to our space.
Yeah, no, I'd love to come out and see it. That would be fantastic. And so you did mention Roland at Home. Again, and this kind of ties into the end of the last point that you made, but are there any other initiatives besides Roland at Home that Roland Canada has been implementing, besides doing, again, also the more live streams, things like that?
Well, I think, from our own personal experience, and I think a lot of people are going through this, we've been transforming, we were forced to adapt to what's going on in the world. And, we took a company of about 50 people where we had quite a few people working outside in the field. They would be salespeople and marketing people visiting music retailers and doing events and clinics, and then the traditional offices with the accounting staff and all those things. But the last several months, we've all been working from home. And we've actually done quite well as a company to be able to do that. Everybody's been working from home, and some really enjoy it. Some people are itching to get back to the office, that kind of thing. And we're not sure what the new reality is, but I don't believe any business will be returning to what they had before. So we're working on our midterm plan, is what we see our company's going to look like in the next 1 to 3 years, in terms of, do we need the same amount of office space, and how do we want to get together and collaborate, that kind of thing. And we're using Zoom technology right now that we've been using for a few years. And so we were early adopters of this, and we're really enjoying it. I just wish I would have bought stock in Zoom last year.
I know, right?
But, as far as how we work as a company, certainly we're going to have to focus more energy on marketing and digital marketing, because right now a lot of marketing was being done in stores. Come to a music store, see the new product.
Of course.
Let us talk about the product. Product displays, things like that. We had things that we called the Boss checkpoints. It was a Boss pedal board display. There'd be 24 Boss pedals all hooked up. You could plug in and try it. Well, if you're not going to a store to do that, then how do we expose our products and our brands? So definitely there's more of a focus on digital marketing, and that will continue. But that will be something that will probably keep trending. It was Roland at Home. We see now people are starting to want to get outside, and they have the ability to kind of get back outdoors. So we're looking at, okay, how do you take your music with you? So I think it's important for a company like ours just to be up to date with, okay, how are people feeling? What is the public doing? What do they want to do? And where do we fit in as a brand and as a music company to help them be creative through the process? So I can't give you a definitive answer where we'll be in 6 months or a year, but certainly we will be dynamic to find our way. But we want to talk to customers, and if we won't be able to do that as much in a music retail store, then it needs to be online or through other forms.
Well, that's all the questions I had for today. Dave, was there anything you'd like to ask Brian before?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we've covered it all. I look forward to continuing to, work together and use your products and explore new ideas. That's what we're here for. And I've probably played more in the last, since I stopped working at UBC, I've probably played more in the last 10 years than the previous 25 or whatever it's been. So, yeah, I'm always eager to try new products and incorporate new ideas into what I'm doing. And, you know, I kind of understand that what I do is a pretty specific way of approaching drums and percussion, but it works, you know, and I get to play, and I get to play with some other great people, and Graham's helping a lot of other people get started and expanding their skills and their directions and their writing and their recording. So yeah, there's a lot of different areas we can work together in, for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll look for those opportunities, and as soon as we can get together, you know, I think we already even had a list of gear we were working on with Graeme. It's just we're waiting to the point that we can get some new gear into your hands. So we'll hope that day comes soon. And again, really enjoyed having the discussion today. And again, if there's anything that you or your listeners are interested in Roland product, please go to roland.com, and there's a Roland at Home page that talks about a little bit of some of the music making you can do at home. I'll leave you with one other area of interest that we've seen a lot of growth in. And there's been a huge interest and spike in live stream. And again, we don't make a lot of products. We have a Roland Pro Audio Visual division, but there's probably about 10 or 12 different products we make. Some are prosumer, you know, like $300-400 products that anybody would buy just to use to get a multi-camera view, whether you're doing a podcast or some live stream at home, all the way up to broadcast, you know, $20,000-30,000 products. But we've seen our industry has seen an incredible spike in live stream, and we do not see an end to that. A lot of companies like ours are positioning themselves to say, okay, we need to invest more into this because the demand is so high, and more people, particularly musicians, they're going to need that outlet. And a lot of people are going to want to find a way to monetize that. You know, if you can't play gigs anymore, you can't go on tour, how can I monetize my music? And a lot of this is going to go to good quality live streaming. And there's a lot of great technology out there, and I think you're going to see this technology get really, really good and better in the coming 1 or 2 years. But it's been the industry has been unbelievable. It's probably one of the biggest things that have gone on in our industry this year is just the demand. Where 2 or 3 months ago it was regular business, nothing too busy. Where right now the popular products are being sold out into next year. Oh, wow. So that's a space to watch for anybody as a musician is live streaming, what you can do, looking for tools. And we have some tools. If you go to Roland live stream, it talks about some things that musicians and things are doing. There's a lot of great information out there. But if you're a musician and you want to play and you want to showcase yourself, find a way to monetize. Live streaming is something to look into.
How, since we've talked about doing it with VAMS, are there effective ways for musicians to be playing from different locations, but to play together, jamming, so to speak?
You know, I don't have a lot of experience in there, but I know there's a few platforms out there. I think there's one that's called Sessionware that I've seen, and it's software designed for musicians to play together online. And I've heard it's one of the better ones. You know, there's the latency is one of the lowest in there, so you don't have that lag time when you're playing with other musicians. There's a lot of good tools and editing available to set up screens and your audio and things like that. But those things are becoming popular, and I think you'll probably see a lot more products available in the next year for the musicians that want to get together and do your rehearsal or your jam. But you want it to sound real.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we're doing a show on Saturday. It's it's a hootenanny, so just individual players from different locations, but more just individuals, not bands. So they're just more or less singer-songwriter type things, but we'd like to be able to find a way to do that so we can play together. But with Zoom and some of these other platforms, you only hear the audio from the featured speaker, really. You can't sing together or anything like that. Yeah,
and the classic problem is the guitar player is always too loud still. You need to have the ability to adjust your own mix.
Exactly.
Not a drummer, no.
Never. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. And again, I look forward to when all this is done and we can get together.
Great, thank you.
Great to talk to you, Dave and Graeme, and you guys stay safe out there.
Yeah, you too, Brian.
Great, you too. All the best.
All right, take care.